I'm personally very interested to know firstly how your experience was in Yale and how difficult was it to get into Yale?
How hard was it to apply for jobs in the UK while being based in India?
And now I do corporate finance and project financings, which is basically M&A transactions and project financing transactions for renewable energy projects.
Always being in that mindset of building relationships, I think, is an important tip that I would give to myself.
Hello guys, welcome to the inaugural episode of this new channel. I'm Jas,
And I'm his sister Meher.
and thank you for joining our first episode.
Well, we've created this channel to talk to all of you about careers, professional growth, and personal finance.
And I started our journey in New Delhi in India, where we both started with our bachelors before moving abroad for our masters and then to continue our professional journey through various countries in Asia and also in America and in Europe now. And we have had several learnings, both from an educational perspective and also from a professional perspective. And we thought we would start this channel to discuss what we've learned along the way. So before we go into the learnings, Meher, do you want to give a quick overview of what your career has been so far, for the viewers, going from the beginning to where you are now?
Absolutely. Thanks, Jazz. So, guys, I just completed 6 years in the workforce this summer. I did my undergrad in economics in India. Thereafter, my passion for economics led me to pursue my master's in Yale University in the US. I then started my first full time role in finance at Goldman Sachs in Singapore. 2 years later, I found myself then shifting to a pension fund to become a portfolio manager. And last year, I shifted to London in the UK to start my career in strategy consulting.
Thanks very much for that, Meher. It sounds like you've had a lot of different changes, both from a locational perspective and also from a career choice perspective. So, I'm personally very interested to know firstly how your experience was in Yale and how difficult was it to get into Yale?
Well, the experience at Yale, to be honest, was really eye opening because I moved to a new country. I had to immerse in a new culture for the very first time moving from India, and I got the opportunity to study with the best minds across the world. We will be talking about this topic of me going to Yale in the subsequent videos in detail. Yeah, I think it was just an amazing experience for me, Jazz.
That sounds very interesting. The other thing that came to my mind was you moved from the US to Singapore, which is an unusual choice
Yeah.
in some regards. So, can you talk to the viewers about why you chose to make that step?
Absolutely. Well, guys, I was deliberating a few job options in the US as well as in Singapore. And I went for the option of Singapore because I got the opportunity to work at a very reputed investment bank like Goldman Sachs. And also, I was very curious to start my career in a vibrant economy like Asia Pacific, which at that point of time was growing quite strongly. So, from a learning perspective as well as from a professional perspective, that career move seemed like a wise option at the time. Yeah.
Thank you very much for that.
Well, enough about me, guys. Chaz, can you tell us a bit about your journey from school, from India, all the way to the UK with our viewers?
No, of course. So, my journey started in New Delhi, India as well, where I studied economics for my undergraduate bachelor's before moving to the UK to study finance and economics at business school. I then moved back to India for a year where I worked with the government of India in their finance department, where I worked for the Ministry of Finance of India. And then after a year of continuing in that role, I moved to the UK, to Scotland, to start my role at a leading investment bank. After working at the bank for a couple of years, I moved down to London, where I started a different role at the same bank. And here I covered financing transactions for different corporates across industries. And I did this role for a few more years before I decided to make the shift to the industry side. And now I do corporate finance and project financings, which is basically M&A transactions and project financing transactions for renewable energy projects.
Wow, seems like there's been a lot of different twists and turns in your journey, Jazz. What I think I want to know is what prompted the move from UK to India, after you completed your master's?
Well, the answer to this question is very simple. I was a student who came to the UK from India, and I was on a student visa. And at that point of time, there was a definite period after you finish your master's that you had to get a job, otherwise you had to move back to India. So for me, that period was 3 months, and unfortunately, I was not as well prepared as you. And so I could not secure a job in that period, and I had to come back to India. But then I started this new journey to work with the government there.
That sounds extremely honest. The second question I wanted to ask you is, how hard was it to apply for jobs in the UK while being based in India? Because that's a very unusual story.
Yeah, that's a good question. And you're right that it is harder to apply for these jobs being in a different country because, as you may know, and we'll discuss it in the future episodes as well, that the interview process for graduate level jobs tends to be very structured, whether it's in the UK, in the US, the interview process tends to be quite structured. And so it was difficult because in many instances you have to travel to the UK for assessment centers. And so, for instance, I traveled a couple of times unsuccessfully before eventually finding a job at this investment bank and being successful. So, but indeed, it was a rewarding but interesting journey. So thank you for that section, Meher. Now, coming back to you, you've obviously had an interesting, career transitioning from school to university, navigating various challenges from university all the way to going to Singapore and then coming to London. So a question for you, if you had to give one tip or suggestion to your younger self with the experience that you've had so far, what would that be?
Thanks, Jazz. I think that's a very amazing question. And to my younger self, I would say that build relationships and build connections. And what I mean by that is that networking is very, very important. No matter where you are in your journey, be it in high school, be it in college, or in the professional world, you never know the connections that you have built, how you might help them someday, and how they might come to help you. And so, always being in that mindset of building relationships, I think, is an important tip that I would give to myself. How about you, Jazz?
And yes, I would say that one of the most important things that I've learned is of not being afraid to ask for what you want, right? Whether it be in a professional setting, it can be the next step that you want on the ladder, or you want more responsibility, never being afraid to ask the question. So whether it be in the application process or it being in the professional setting, it's very important to just ask for what it is that you want and taking those big risks as well. For instance, not being afraid to move cities or countries or making career transitions similar to the ones that we've been talking about today.
Many of you have similar questions around which university should you go to, what should your first job look like, and should you be making those career moves or not. And we hope to share our own mistakes and learnings and experiences to help you make those important decisions.
We obviously have several ideas of what we want to cover in the coming weeks, but please, if you're still watching till now, write in the comment section if you're interested in any specific part so we get a sense of what the viewers are interested in.
Just one thing, guys, if you found this helpful, do like the video, do subscribe, and if you have friends who are thinking about similar questions, do consider sharing this content with them as well. Thank you, and see you in our next video.
Thanks very much.